Well, Happy New Year, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome back. Did you enjoy the holiday? Yeah. Did you hate the holiday? Some of you will clap for that. It's a mixed bag. I loved it, except for the parts that I didn't, and I'll tell you all about it in just a few minutes. I am so excited for 2019. I think 2019 is going to be the best yet, because the best is yet to come, and we've got some good stuff coming this year. And as I sat down to really think through where we're going this year and what we're going to do with sermon series and all of that, something popped into my mind, trajectory popped into my mind, and here's why. In the new year, at certain seasons of the year, certain things happen inside of us, or for most of us anyway. Like in the summertime, we kind of get off our regular routines, we think about relaxing a little bit, we go on vacation, and that's just kind of like, that's a normal rhythm of life. When we get back to fall and the kids get back to school, we get back on routines and things get busier again, and that's a normal rhythm of life. In January, not all of us, most of us will reflect on the previous year and our lives and look at ourselves and go, here's what needs to change and here's what needs to improve and here's what I want to do. We're very reflective and we're very goal-oriented, and so we set some goals for the new year and all of that. And I thought, well, trajectory would be the perfect sermon series because we got our goal and we want to hit our goal, right? And then I looked up the word trajectory. And this is the most misnamed sermon series in the history of the world. Okay, so this is what it says. The path followed by a projectile flying, you're not a projectile and you don't fly. Or an object moving under the action of given forces. Doesn't really sound like life. And then I found a second definition. A trajectory is the path of an object through space, okay, or the path of life that a person chooses. Well, that's closer. But I still was not settled with this whole idea of life being a trajectory. And here's why. When I think of trajectory, and my guess is when you think of a trajectory, it's easy for me to say, you think of like a rocket taking off and going through space, like the moon launch. You know, there's a huge explosion, all this energy released up front, you get all this momentum, and then you take into account, gravitational forces and friction and all of that, and you've got this trajectory getting to the moon. Or if we want to bring it down to earth, a bow and arrow, an archer, they pull back the bow and they release the arrow, and there's this explosion of energy, and it releases and it follows, its momentum carries it, and it follows a trajectory towards a target. Or same thing with a gun. Or if you're a golfer, you might hit your target if you're a good golfer. But, again, release of energy, the ball goes up, and it follows its trajectory and comes down, again, depending on how good you are, where you want it to or not where you want it to, right? But there's a target involved, there's a projectile, and you and I all think the same way. The fastest way between 2 points is a straight line, right? And that's the trajectory. Or if there are other forces involved, then it's an arch, but it's still the trajectory. Now here's the problem. It doesn't take into account twists and turns and detours. And if you've lived any amount of life at all, you know there are twists and there are turns and there are detours, and they will rob your momentum and that inertia. And if that's what you're relying on to get to where you're going, guess what? You're not going to get there. You're not going to get there. And this is how we approach New Year's every year, isn't it? We look at New Year's, we make our New Year's resolutions, and we think, well, if I can just get enough momentum coming out of January, I'm going to make it to where I'm going, and we don't. Now, New Year's resolutions aren't bad things. Having goals for the new year, that's really good. Reflecting and making plans and all that, really good. I think the way we do it causes some disappointment in the process, and I want to address that a little bit today. Inc. magazine did a survey this year on what the top 10 New Year's resolutions are. And they're all really good stuff. I'm going to go through them here in just a second. But they're pretty much the same New Year's resolutions that people have every year. Maybe the percentages change a little bit. Number 10 is this: spend more time with family and friends. That might be a good number one, I'm just saying. But 13% of the people listed that as on their list of New Year's resolution. Drink less alcohol. The same 15% of the people who listed that last year listed it this year. Number 8, find another job. And 16% of us don't like the job we're in, some number less than that will actually find a new job this year. Read more, number 7. Quit smoking, number 6. Learn a new skill or hobby, number 5. Save more and spend less. Financial fitness, that's a big one this time of year, especially coming out of Christmas when we swiped our way through with the credit card, right? And we're feeling that a little bit. And then the top 3 have to do with health and wellness. Lose weight, 54% of Americans listed lose weight. Exercise more, 65%. And diet or eat healthier, 71% of us would list that on our New Year's resolutions. And all of those are good goals. There's not a bad one there. The problem is, as New Year's resolutions, they don't work. They don't work. For example, if I were to say, I am going to get healthy, I'm going to start exercising and working out, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, I'm going to get my health club membership, and I'm off to the gym, right? That doesn't work, because we do that in January. I mean, health club memberships go through the roof in January, and we buy the year-long membership because, you get a discount if you buy that in January. That's actually part of their plan, just saying. Planet Money did a study. Planet Money's a magazine. They did a study on Planet Fitness. I think that's kind of funny. But Planet Fitness is a health club organization, and they've got different models and different size health clubs. But one of their models is a 300-person health club. They can accommodate 300 people. Now, they're stacked to the rafters, and there's lines, and you wouldn't want to be there with 300 people, but technically they could accommodate 300 people. Do you know how many memberships they sell for that 300-person gym? 6,000. Right. Now, how can they do that? Because half of them never show up. Not once. And if they found that, they go in January, they buy their membership, they get the year-long membership, they have all the inertia and all the good intentions in the world, and half of them don't show up. By March, most of the rest of them are not showing up, and by June, unless you're a health club person and you like working out, you're gone. You're just not there. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And here's why. And this is so important. You need to get your head around this. It will serve you well for the rest of your life. And this is why I misnamed, this is the reason this series is so misnamed. But maybe we'll remember it, I don't know. Life is not a trajectory. Life is not a trajectory. Life is a journey, not a trajectory. Life is a journey. A trajectory is something we are launched out of a rocket or a cannon or whatever, and we ride the momentum to where we're going, and life doesn't work that way. Life is a journey, and a journey begins with a step, not an explosion, and it is continued one step at a time. And when we get off track or we get diverted or we find ourselves in a detour or a failure or maybe an opportunity we haven't anticipated, we continue to take our next step, and we have things in our lives that steer us back to the path that we want to be on and ultimately the target that we want to hit. But New Year's resolutions are miserable because we rarely hit them. Because life is a journey, not a trajectory. So, today, I want to give you permission to relax. Let's all just take a deep breath collectively together. Ready? In through the nose, out through the mouth. You can relax. You are not a rocket. That's good news. That's good news because if you're a rocket, you're going to burn out. It's just a matter of time. God created you to cooperate with the rhythms of life. He created you to be on a journey that lasts a lifetime where you continue to take this step and this step and this step, and your next step in following Him. And as you do, you're going to end up where you want to be long term. Now, there's not a problem with what we do in January as far as reflecting and setting goals and evaluating our lives, but the New Year's dynamics are dysfunctional at best with the resolution thing because we think we're going to get there in a month, or we think that the energy of that first month will carry us through the year, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Matthew Kelly, he's a famous business consultant, motivational speaker. He's been quoted by people like Bill Gates, is famous for saying this. He says, most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a month. That's pretty true, isn't it, when you stop and think about it? He goes on, he says, we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. We all want life to be a rocket. We all want instantaneous results. We all want the thrill of the explosion early on and riding that momentum. But ultimately, it doesn't serve us very well. Last January, I decided I wanted to get in shape. I wanted to start exercising, but I don't like going to the gym. And my wife turned me onto this thing called the 7-minute workout. Is anybody familiar with the 7-minute workout? Don't Google it right now. You can Google it later. I don't recommend it. All right, so the 7-minute workout is there's 14 exercises that you do in 7 minutes. And it's really 9.5 minutes because there's 15-second breaks between, but it's interval training and it's super intense. And I'm like, I got a week into it. I'm like, I can do the 14-minute workout. I'm gonna do it twice, And I'm just pushing and I'm riding that rocket up out of there. And I ended up injuring myself and didn't exercise the rest of the year. Now, I would have been better off to have gone out and walk my dog every day, right? And get physical exercise and cardiovascular exercise, and my relationship with my dog would be better. My relationship with God would be better. It would have all been better. But no, I'm going to do it in 7 minutes. I'm going to go in. Now, you CrossFit people, shut up. I'm just saying, you keep doing you. But I'm here to say, guys, slow and steady wins the race every time. It wins the race every time. You can do more. You can do more over the long haul if you change your mindset, if you shift your mindset. Slow and steady wins. On the day after Christmas, my family and I, we moved. We just moved 5 minutes down the road, but a move is a move. And we decided that, or I decided really, because I kind of try and live like a rocket, learning to practice what I preach. We decided we're going to move in a day. We'll unpack in 2 or 3 days. Everything will be settled. Life will be wonderful. We're going to go. So I got up on the day after Christmas, and I started packing stuff up, and we had friends show up, and those friends are my best friends in the whole world and always will be. I just want you guys to know. And they showed up, and we started packing. We started moving, and like 15 hours later, we're up at the other house. We moved so much stuff, and we're moving from a larger house to a smaller house, right? And so there's not room for everything. And fall into bed, and I'm like, yeah, we're done. This is awesome. Just a couple more things to get. Went back to the other house the next day. There was 4 more days of moving to do. I mean, it was because I had everybody lined up for day 1, right? And we're just going to get it all done. And I thought we maybe had it all done. We didn't have it all done. And we had to adjust our expectations. Like, we're going to be living in boxes for weeks. It's just life. I mean, Christy and I sat down and said, okay, we can find the things, if we can find them, that we need to live and find homes for those things. And the things that we know we're going to get rid of, we can put that in another pile, and that's going to be garbage. And then everything else in the middle, we're going to have to put in boxes and just go through like a box a day until we can figure it. Because it takes if you've done this before, it takes an enormous amount of energy to go, do we need this? Don't we need it? If we're going to keep it, where are we going to put it? And I love moving. It's so fun. But once I made that adjustment in my thinking, I was able to take a breath and go, okay, we're going to come back at this tomorrow, and we're going to take another step, and we're going to take another step. And we're still stepping, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be wonderful. And we have a picture, a target of what it looks like when it's done, and we're going to continue to work our way towards that. But I was able to, day 3, to take the dog, go out in the woods for a walk, and gain some sanity, and it was good. And I was able to stop and smell the roses. And guys, every one of us was created to stop and smell the roses. We have to. But when you're living on a rocket, there's no time for that. There's no time for that. Now, it's not that we're not going anywhere. We're still going somewhere. It's important to go somewhere. It's important to have goals. Maybe you have health goals. Maybe you have personal enrichment goals. I don't know what your goals are for this year. And those are all good. But what I want to talk about in the rest of our time together is this. There is a goal that if you have as your main goal, the big goal, the goal beyond the goals, will change everything for you when you talk about your goals. It's important to know where you're headed. It's important to know who you want to be on the way there. It's important to know the legacy you want to leave and how you want to be remembered. Several years ago, I did a funeral for a young man who tragically took his own life. Those are hard funerals. This one rocked my world. Because as I stood there, and this guy had made some bad life choices, made a really, really bad life choice at the end. And person after person got up and talked about the impact that this young man had on their lives, how he loved them, how he was there for them, how he just loved them well. How he was like with the family, all the nieces and nephews just loved him because he'd get down and play with them and show up with whimsical toys and fun things. And friend after friend, colleague after colleague, family member after family member. I remember siblings stood up and said, I've done everything right. My life is all together and he's done everything wrong. And yet look how much people love him. As we were on our way to the, I'd never seen this before or since, on our way to the cemetery, cars on the other side of the highway stopped. Went through neighborhoods and people were lining the streets. I'm like, holy cow. And I think he maybe accidentally tapped in to the secret of life, tapped in to what Jesus taught over and over again. He tapped in to the target for this life that so many of us miss because we get so enamored with other things and we lose our way. And I'm telling you, if you don't keep the target in sight, if you don't keep it front and center here and keep your eyes on it, you'll drift and you'll decide on other targets and you'll miss out on what you were created for. Jesus got this. He made it so clear and we complicate it. It's so simple. It's so simple. One day Jesus was asked by some religious scholars it was a trick question. They're trying to trick him. And they were always trying to trap Jesus. And he was asked, what is the most important law in the Bible? What's the most important thing that we can do? Well, if he picks one, then the others, whatever. But he answers with what would have been expected. This was no surprise. With Jesus' answer was no surprise. He says in Mark 12, the most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. That is called the Shema. That is a prayer we find in Deuteronomy, and good Jewish folks would pray that every day. And that would have been, Jesus wasn't the first rabbi to say that. But what was surprising is Jesus added this, the second, which the guy didn't ask for a second, but Jesus wasn't going to let the first stand on its own. He said the second is this: just like it, just as important, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. And I think what Jesus was doing, it's very easy for religious people to go, well, I love God, invisible God, and it's in my head or whatever, and I love God. I have warm feelings of fuzziness towards God. I love God. And Jesus is like, hey, you can fool yourself. In fact, if you want to really know if you love God, love other people really, really well. The most important thing Jesus says in all the scriptures is loving God with all you got and loving other people the way you love yourself. And it boils down to that good relationship, connectedness with God, and lots of love. Pretty simple, isn't it? Pretty profound. I think that's what I was witnessing. Because when somebody either intentionally or accidentally falls into loving well, they live a compelling life, no matter what their other mistakes and everything else are. Everything else, guys, Jesus said, everything backs up to these two. There was another account. We don't know if it was in another gospel. We don't know if it was the same event or if Jesus was asked a second time. But what he said, he gives the same answer. And he says, all the law and the prophets, everything in the Bible hangs on those two commandments. Everything backs up to them. And I would tell you, everything else you want to accomplish in your life backs up to those two commandments. There's some things I know about you. You want to live a joyful life. Does any of us want to live a sad life? Not are you, but do you want? No, we want to live a joyful life. You want to live a joyful life? Love God and love other people well. And man, you are going to experience joy like you've never seen. You want to live a life of impact. You want to have an impact and live a life that matters in our world. You want to do that really well, consistently? Love God. Love other people. You want to live a life that works? Love God. Love other people. You want to live a life that has contentment. There's nothing more contenting to the soul than having people in your life who you love and who love you, and God, and being at peace with God and loving Him. You want to have happy kids? Love well. Kids thrive in an environment of love. And I could go on and on and on and on. It's the secret to life. We complicate it and we try and theologize it and we make it way more difficult than it needs to be. And I'm here to suggest to you today that if you're going to set a target for your trajectory, for your journey, and you need to have a target and you need to have a goal, that's it. And if it's something else, it's a lesser something else. That if you will set that as your goal, as your target, and start working towards that, start moving towards that one step at a time, not like a rocket, it will change everything for you. It's the secret to enjoying the detours of life. It's a secret to celebrating our failures, because in the context of a loving God and loving people and all of that, failures aren't fatal and they're not final. They're an opportunity to get to where God's taking us. It's the secret to being okay when things don't seem okay. And I'm telling you, on this journey we're on, with all of its twists and turns, there are going to be times where it doesn't feel like it's okay. But you can be okay. You can relax and enjoy the ride. And some of us need to do that. I got geeky in this sermon. I'm not a mathematician, so forgive me if my formulas are wrong, but I put together a formula for this. Sometimes it's helpful for me to get my head around something, to kind of draw it out. And so for you math geeks, this is for you. For the rest of us, you'll be able to follow along. And the formula is this. It's T equals Fm times GH plus DI. Easy enough. You got it, right? Let's pray. Dear Jesus. No, I'm just... Let me explain. T is the target. T is the target. And so you got to know what the target is. And I'm telling you, if the target is loving God with everything you've got and loving other people, you got the right target. That's who you want to be. That's who you want to be. And that's who God wants you to be. Set that, even if you're not a Christian or you don't believe what I believe, I'm telling you, if you set that as your goal, man, life's going to be better. It really will. Really will. So T, the target. Love God, love others. Then FM. We still have that up there? Go ahead and put the chart up, if you would. Maybe. There it is. All right, so FM, forward motion. You have to move. God steers moving people. You can't steer a parked car. You can't steer a parked person. So many people, Christians, a lot of Christians are like, oh, I don't want to be outside of God's will. I'm just going to sit here and wait for Him to tell me what to do next, and then I'll move. Well, listen to me. If your goal is to love Him and love other people, and you're moving towards that one step at a time, you're in the will of God. You can lose the fear and the anxiety, and you can start moving. Just do it. Take your next step. He'll guide you in the process. It's forward motion times guiding habits. Guiding habits are the things that we build into our lives. They're habits. They're things that we do on a regular basis, and they grow our faith, and they keep us on track. And then the DI is divine intervention. It's in the midst of that, and primarily in the midst of divine habits, that God shows up and speaks to our heart, or opens a door, or closes a door, or does something supernatural and guides our lives. All right? Now, the other issue that I see a lot is there are people who don't want to develop any divine habits. They just want God to show up or not divine habits, guiding habits. They just want, well, God told me to go to this address, and God told me to do this and do that. And all right, most of the time, God's going to speak to you in the context of a guiding habit. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time in this series. We're going to be looking at doable habits, 4 doable habits that will keep you moving in the right direction to hit the goal that we're all going for. And they're doable in that they're not so hard. They're not so hard that you'll be tempted to quit, but they're not so easy that you'll be tempted to quit either. And they're habits in that they're things you do regularly enough that it just becomes part of who you are, part of your routine. And these things are powerful. They've been powerful going all the way back to Jesus, through the early church, and through the history of Christianity. So here's what we're going to do. Step 1, we're going to set the target. What is the target? Love God, love other people. Step 2, get over our fear and start moving. For those of us that are stuck in fear and aren't moving, headed in the right direction. Step 3, we're going to develop habits that keep you on the path with God. And step 4, we're going to look for divine intervention along the way. And God will show up in your life along the way. He just does that. So today, I want to look at one habit. A really important habit. A profound habit. I would dare say even a countercultural habit. And what I'm about to say might make you feel good, and it might make you feel guilty. But I'm just going to say it because it is what it is. Just know that my intent is not to make you feel guilty. It's just to address what is. And that first habit is this: corporate worship. What we're doing right now, gathering together with the people of God, worshiping Him in song, in the reading and teaching of His Word, in being together, praying for one another, all the different various things that we do when we gather together in His name, something amazingly powerful happens. And here's the problem. This has been downplayed. Even in the church, it's been downplayed. I'm guilty of downplaying the importance of corporate worship. Organized religion has a really bad name. People are like, I don't like organized religion. I tell them, well, we don't either. That's why we're the Vineyard. Just come we're very disorganized, Just come hang out. Just kidding. But, it does. It really does. And for good reason. I read the same headlines you do and the church scandals that are going on in our world, and it breaks my heart, and it gives the church a really bad name. And people are like, well, I don't need that. It's just me and Jesus, and me and Jesus, we got it together. And there's a problem with that, though. It's never been just me and Jesus. Jesus made Christianity a team endeavor. He made it about one another and the people of God gathering together. This is another influence. So we live in an individualized society where Google knows what you want before you know what you want, and you get exactly that on your screen. It's all about you, baby, right? The next worship song is going to be, it's all about you, it's all about you. You'll be singing it to yourself. Because that's where our society is going, right? So I don't need all these other people. It's all about me, and we're more connected digitally than we've ever been, but in reality, we're less connected than we've ever been. And so all these influences are going on. And then you'll hear people saying, I've even said on some occasions some of these things like, I don't need to go to church to have a relationship with God. Well, technically, I guess there's some truth there. Or this is one that I'll say, but I know what I mean by it. The woods are my church. That's my cathedral. That's where I go and commune with God. Or going to church doesn't make you a Christian. And that's true. Going to church does not make you a Christian. So there's an element of truth in all of those things, but there's an element of mistruth in every one of them as well. See, I don't need to go to church to have a relationship with God. That's probably true if you live on a desert island, but Christianity is all about loving other people and the one another's, and Jesus modeled doing life together, and boy, I think He'd have grace for you if you were stuck on a desert island without anybody. It'd probably, okay. But you're not. There is a power in corporate worship that feeds your relationship with God. It's important. It's profound. Corporate worship connects us with God and with others in a way that I don't know of anything else that does. And I would be willing to say, I don't believe that you can be a healthy Christian and be disconnected from the body of Christ. I don't see it in the pages of the Bible. I don't see it in anything that Jesus demonstrated or taught. Like, we need each other. And there is something that profound that happens when we gather together. Now, here's the reality of what's happening in our culture. 40 years ago, if you surveyed church people and said, what is regular church attendance? It would have been twice a week. We go Sunday morning, and we go Wednesday evening or to a midweek Bible study or grow group or something along those lines, right? Twice a week, 104 times a year. I am connecting twice a week. I'm connecting with other followers of Christ, corporate worship, and we are keeping one another on track, and we're moving forward together. Today, if you survey church-going Christians, regular church attendance, once every 6 weeks. Now, some of you, that's because you have no idea, well, you probably do have an idea. That is a tremendous cultural shift, and that's among church people, not unchurched people. That's a tremendous shift. Now, some of you are like, well, I go every week, and don't get full of yourself. There's scriptures about that too. And there's some of us are like, yeah, I don't know. I run into people at the grocery store, at Sam's Club or wherever, who I haven't seen in a long time, and they're like, yeah, I love the church. It's my favorite. I haven't been in 6 months. I'm like, why haven't you? I just got out of the habit. And typically, those folks are like, I got to get back. Like, life isn't going very well. I've drifted. And that's exactly what happens when we step away. We end up prioritizing other things over corporate worship. I think in part because the church has downplayed it. I've downplayed it. I'm sorry. That was a mistake. It's important. It's really important. But we prioritize sports. In 5 weeks, the Super Bowl. Who's fired up for the Super Bowl? All right, one person. Excellent. Who is fired up for the Super Bowl commercials? Woo! All right, yeah. All right, so it is one of the lowest attended Sundays of the year because you have to get your man cave ready and make buffalo chicken dip. Right? And so we prioritize sports or recreation or travel or home improvement, guilty, over corporate worship because we think, well, it's not all that important. I don't need to go to church to be a Christian, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think it's a guilt thing, and I don't think it's a salvation thing, like God's going to love you more if you go to church. But it's an important thing. And it wouldn't be such a big deal if it didn't matter so much. Because we drift when we grow disconnected. We drift. The first step away from God is the step away from the people of God. When we disconnect from one another. And you're like, but I'm in a big room and I'm not connected. I know. And we'll talk about meeting with smaller groups of people and the importance of that at some point in this whole series. But there's something uniquely powerful and special that happens in the context of the big room, in this gathering. In Hebrews 10:24, the writer of Hebrews said this, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. I love that. He's shooting for the goal. Love and good deeds. Love God and love other people. How can we spur one another on towards that? Not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. See, they had this problem 2,000 years ago too. Begin to drift from the goal, from the life you want to live. He said, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. We drift. We need the influence of one another, one another's faith, because when my faith is weak, your faith might be stronger, and then you encourage me, and we help one another, and we get off on this side road or this detour, and it's Sunday again. Okay, well, nudge back onto the right path, and then we don't just drift for 6 weeks or longer. We need that influence. Following Jesus is a team sport. Colossians chapter 3 says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly, as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. That pretty much describes church, right? Let the message of Christ dwell in us richly. We do that by gathering together, by singing the songs together, by allowing the Spirit to move in our midst together, by learning together. And it keeps us rooted in the message of Christ and keeps us on the right path. When we disconnect from that, man, it's not good. And there's something profound with the connection with God. Jesus said in Matthew 18, "For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them." And I think when 200 or 300 or hundreds of people gather in his name, man, there's something powerful and profound that happens. And it's good. And it recharges our batteries and it encourages our hearts and it keeps us on track by his power, not ours, as we head out into this world for another week. See, the largest factor in your spiritual direction is your spiritual connection. And for so many of us, and this is happening inside the church, we think, the connection doesn't matter that much. I know I believe the right things, but the connection's not all that important. And the connection is really, really important. Regular corporate worship is an essential guiding habit. It's essential. Essential. It's essential at connecting us with God, at connecting us with others, at centering our lives in his word, even in helping us to serve others. But we have become a responsive culture. We don't intentionalize things. We don't build habits into our lives. We respond to what's next. If I want people to show up to an event, I have to text them 30 minutes before. Oh, my phone tells me I'm supposed to be here. Because otherwise we just don't do it. And this is why habits are so very important. This is one of the most important things you could be doing because it layers spiritual depth and connection into your life. It keeps you on the path towards the goal. It makes you better at life, and it makes your life better. And because it sets examples for the people around you. Guys, downplaying, discounting, not prioritizing the Lord's day, the Lord's gathering, is to our own peril. And I don't say that to make you feel guilty. I don't say that because, it's a salvation issue. If you don't show up in church, then God isn't going to like you anymore. That's not the case. God still loves you. It's not a salvation issue. It's a destination issue. It's a who you're going to be on the journey issue. It's a what the quality of your life is going to be issue. It's the guiding habit, or one of the guiding habits, that keeps you moving in the right direction. So step 1, set your goal. Love God, love others. Step 2, start moving. Get over your fear. Step out and start working step by step, moving step by step in the direction of loving God and loving other peoples. That's it. When I have this bad habit of talking for my dog, and does anybody else do that? You give your dog a voice. This is totally an ADD moment. And anyway, when he talks about people, he talks peoples. Anyway, so at one point I said, let's get real ADD. At one point I said something speaking for the dog, and Deuce looked at me. My son Deuce looked at me and said, "What did he say?" All right, back to the sermon. Number 1, step 1, set your goal. We're going to love God and love other people. 2, we're going to start moving. 3, build into your life guiding habits that will keep you moving on the path of life. So when you get diverted onto a detour, when you find yourself in the middle of a failure, when you find yourself stopped and in a deep depression, it's one step back. You've got people around you. You've got what you need to get to where you're going. And so today I want to challenge you to determine that this is going to be a priority. And it's not so that you show up, I need more people to show up to church. No, this is for you, not for me. This is about what God wants to do in and through your life. What about online? That's the big question in this day and age, because a lot of people are watching online. Hi, everybody online. Glad you're tuned in. You know, watching online is great. It's a great way to catch up on content. Like if you missed a weekend for whatever reason you were out of town. But I'm wrestling with this. I don't think it's a substitute for corporate worship, for gathering together with the people of God. And so if you live within driving distance of the Capitol Theater in downtown Wheeling, get in your car and come to church and make it a priority. If you don't, and you're watching, because we've got folks that watch in Florida and Minnesota and Washington, D.C. and all over the place. Hi, guys. Keep watching. We love having you part of the family, but I would really suggest you find a place where you can worship with other believers where you are as well. Because corporate worship is a guiding habit that will enrich your life, that will guide your life, and that will get you ultimately to where you want to be. And you know what I found? That divine intervention part, so often God speaks to me in the midst of corporate worship. Either through what the pastor's saying, or there's a song and he whispers into my heart, or somebody prays for me. God speaks in church. Look for the divine intervention. Next week, we're going to talk about a guiding habit that could change everything for you, so make sure you're here and bring somebody with you. Let's pray. Lord, thank you that you made us to be a family, to be connected. Thank you for how important, how powerful, and how profound corporate worship is. I pray that you would help us to live countercultural lives, to prioritize what you prioritize, and to live lives that outrageously love you and others. In Jesus' name, amen.